Hi everyone and welcome to our CCH Integrator 2017.4 Product Update webinar. I'm Bianca and I'll be your moderator today. Your presenters today are Briony Campbell, General Manager for Group Product, and Jim Edwards, Director for Corporate Reporting Solutions from Wolters Kluwer. In today's webinar, Briony and Jim will be covering the main enhancements following the recent upgrade. You can submit questions via the Questions tab at any time throughout the webinar, but due to the limited time available, we will reply to any questions after the webinar. I think we're ready to begin, so I'll hand you over to Briony and Jim.
Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to the CCH Integrator 2017.4 product update. We really want to spend some time with you today to briefly go through what we've delivered in the recent release, but also take time to spend going through what we have on the near horizon from an application perspective. So today we'll cover off an updated product overview, so the actual integrator platform, we'll quickly cover that off. The enhancements to workflow that we've brought through in the release, as well as standard reports, also some general enhancements, and some enhancements to web sheets. And later on, as I said, we'll go through what's coming up and what's in our R&D pipeline at the moment for the platform, which is quite exciting. So the CCH Integrator platform, you can see on screen at the moment, is how we think about Integrator, and articulate Integrator for all users. It's made up of the core and design and solutions layer. And it's these boxes in red that you can see on screen that we've added to in terms of our enhancements. So they're our areas of focus for the 2017.4 release. And it's really that design layer that you can see in the middle layer that we're focusing on in terms of our R&D that we're taking on in the product. It really is the future of the integrator platform, and it's about providing end users the ability to configure their own work papers or workflow. So they're really tools designed to help the end user with their own needs from a product perspective. So our first enhancement for the 2017.4 release has been workflow. Now, workflow was introduced back in January 2015, so quite a few releases ago. It was in CCH Integrator release 8.1. And what we've done is we've gone back and obviously fine-tuned further what we have available in the workflow release. So what we've done is we've actually provided the ability for users to do a bulk copy or bulk roll forward and a bulk update with latest template changes for workflow. So this enhancement is obviously really important, especially with corporations and service firms that have a large volume of workbooks that if they're using workflow for. So this really will help our end users to obviously automate and be more efficient with their processes for workflow. I am pleased to say that in the future we do have further enhancements for workflow plans, so we'll go through those at some time in the future. Another enhancement in the release that we've had is to standard reports within Integrator. Now, in the past, we haven't spent a huge amount of time on the reporting aspect of Integrator, it could be said. And what we're doing is actually going back and looking at the outputs from Integrator. A lot of our clients will take the reporting outputs of a tax effect accounting calculation and provide those through the auditor. So what we're doing, we've had feedback from clients, which has been really valuable, and we're going back and we're reviewing those reports and obviously making them even more valuable to an end user. Now, we've had a few changes there. So we've gone back to our standard reports for single workbook, and we've updated the general formatting. So what we mean by that is we've bolded things like the parent accounts on PDF and Excel reports. We've included sales and separators for numbers. We've provided parentheses for negative values. We've increased the font size as well to aid readability for the user. We've increased column width to accommodate really large numbers. And we've also taken into account, obviously, regional settings as well when it comes to the report. So from a PDF perspective and from an Excel perspective, I think that end users will see a big difference to those reports in this release. So it won't be the end of the enhancements that we're looking for in our standard reports. As I said, these general formatting improvements have been for single workbook only, so as yet we haven't implemented them for aggregated or comparative reporting. However, that is something that we're looking at as finishing off, I should say. Another thing that we've included in the 2017.4 release is updates to the DTA and DTL reports. So we've actually gone back and redesigned the reports again to make them a lot more user-friendly and obviously a lot more valuable, particularly if you are providing the reports to a third party. So what we've done specifically for the DTA and DTL reports is we've reclassified tax accounting categories in a separate section. We've also provided an edit check section which flows data from the tax accounting summary to enable the reconciliation of the report with cumulative tax schedule. We've also flagged initial recognition exceptions in a separate section. Again, parent accounts have been folded to aid readability, as well as obviously the changes that we've made to the standard reports, which is the inclusion of thousand separators, parentheses for negative values, and increasing the font size. So I think most users, again, will see a big difference in those reports and would definitely be interested in feedback if you have the time to provide that. So, so that's been a really welcome inclusion from a lot of end users. In the release, we've also included user-defined report data sources as well for DTA and DTL reports. So that means that clients can now create their own macros and display and potentially display their reports in a format that they would like to display them in particular. And that has been, I guess, an omission from the product that we've had for a little while that obviously a lot of clients require. So those DTA and DTL reports, user-defined data sources are quite important. So moving on from reporting, in the 2017.4 release, we've also added the ability for a client to data export out their Australian local file return and associated documents and file those straight to the ATO. So traditionally, within CCH Integrator, from an Australian requirement perspective, we've never had the requirement to send or e-file attachments with the ATO. It's always been the disclosures or the forms, say for the company tax return. There's never actually been previously a requirement to send through attachments to the ATO. However, with the introduction of the Australian local file, Part B, the requirement is to actually send those binary files through to the ATO. So we've facilitated that through the 2017.4 release. Thank you.
Thanks, Briony. So now I'm just going to talk to you through some of the enhancements that have been made in the Websheets area of the application. Now, for those of you on the line who aren't familiar with Websheets, so Websheets is the next generation of Integrator's calculation engine. And Websheets are a highly flexible framework that allows the collection, calculation and reporting of numeric and non-numeric information. So you'll start to see a lot more transformation being delivered by these new Websheets functionality. Now, Websheets has been used as a basis for the Australian local file. So for those of you already using the Australian local file, that's all built on top of Websheets. So I'm just going to step you through a few of the enhancements that we've made in this Websheets area of the application, so you can look forward to those changes. For those of you who are still using the sort of more traditional tax accounting and Australian New Zealand tax return calculation engines, they're designed and built on the Integrator, what we're describing as classic functionality, which is independent from Websheets, but soon to be integrated, as we'll cover a little bit later on this call. So one of the enhancements that we made, and this was really done to facilitate the collection of binary information or attachment information that has to be submitted through to the regulators, as Briony was describing before there for the Australian Tax Office for the Australian local file submission. So we've enhanced and we've added a new document browser capability, which is effectively an ability for you to store hundreds or thousands, as many as you have, agreements that then support the transactions that you're then making within your own business. Now, these documents, they're not limited to intercompany transactions. They could also be used for the storage of any other sort of document that you want to store in Integrator. But it allows you to then associate those documents back to the corresponding underlying accounts that you have in the system. So, for example, if you've got individual intercompany transactions on your Part A disclosures, you can then upload attachments and associate them to the relevant intercompany transactions. But equally, in future, you'll be able to associate these documents to any other account that you have on any other given web sheet. For example, it might be a P&L or balance sheet account. Here's another representation of the document browser, showing you what those file attachments then look like when they're actually attached and associated back to an underlying account. In this case, it's an intercompany transaction that's represented on the Australian local file. There's another enhancement that's been done in here too. Now, the Australian government have made it a little bit more complicated for us, as they often do, in the electronic submission of these documents, and they're requiring us to actually generate a unique identifier, and you can see it there, the attachment title. That's the sort of third or fourth column on screen there. So Integrator will go about and will actually automatically generate a unique reference for each of these attachments in the format which has been prescribed by the ATO. So this underlying functionality will then be used, as I said before, beyond the Australian local file and be able to be used for general internal document management purposes, but also then for future external regulatory disclosures in Australia and beyond. Here's another enhancement that's been made in the area of web sheets. Now, this is actually the web sheets mapping screen. So again, for those of you who have not seen web sheets, you'll notice it's very similar to the Integrator Classic approach and style of taking your input on the left-hand side and then mapping it to an output on the right-hand side. You can see it's got a slightly more modern look and feel, and you can work through these chevrons here on screen where we work through a process of basically mapping both columns and rows to an output in the Integrator. We've just made some minor changes here to improve readability, to include different color coding to highlight various different mapping rules. Another enhancement that's been made in web sheets in the 2017.4 release is around the way in which we execute aggregation and re-aggregation. And we actually, in web sheets, one of our learnings that we've gained from the existing use of the classic integrated consolidation or aggregation framework is our end users have sometimes found it difficult when they've had to make amendments to their aggregations, partway through an aggregation or reporting cycle. And historically, there's been a need to go back and recreate a new consolidation in the system and then go and pick all the underlying member workbooks when there is a structural change that's been made to the schedules or the accounts that have been used on those schedules. In web sheets, we can now push down changes to our template structure directly to our aggregate workbook, so removing the need for a preparer or reviewer to then go through and actually rebuild a brand new aggregation. So just a bit of an automation improvement there. Now, another enhancement in the Websheets template configuration module is the ability for a designer to now get some additional diagnostic information about the way in which they use Integrator. Now, we have a number of different, so for a lot of you on the line, this might not make a lot of immediate sense, but just so you're aware where Integrator is going, we have a lot of very large service firms, so all the big four service firms now using Integrator to extend the usage into many, many countries around the world. And they're actually using the Integrated Websheets framework to configure local tax calculations and statutory reporting outputs for many countries. So with that, there are some quite complex tax regimes around the world with lots of very complicated calculations and disclosures. And this diagnostics page is then being used by our designers to allow them to get a sense of the scale of these calculations that they're configuring. So the number of sheets that are involved, the number of calculations, which then just helps them to understand what's going on within the platform itself. So I wanted to look a little bit further ahead to what's coming with Integrator. Now, we're not committing to dates on today's. We've got a very large development team. We've actually just increased it and got a whole heap more developers on the team, which is great. But we've got a whole bunch of changes. What we're going to talk through now is some of the highest priority items that we're looking at, and then I'm going to go on to a little bit about the R&D. So some of the other things that we're looking at and things that you can look forward to in the future. But just on the sort of the immediate high priority pipeline of things we're working on, so as Briony mentioned earlier on, further improvements around those standard and aggregate and comparative reports. We're particularly interested in trying to, one, improve the look, feel, and easy readability of those reports as priority number one. And then closely behind that, we want to get those reports and make them more available online in the context of the application itself. So you can view them on screen, view comparisons on screen and drill down through these reports on screen themselves. But yeah, first priority is to make sure that they're very easy to consume in a printed form or a PDF form. Operating profit tax note, DTA, DTL reports on aggregate form. One of the other key adjustments, the fourth point there on the tax accounting, is opening up the way in which, or altering the way in which our tax movements are entered onto the actual balance sheet. So at the moment in Integrator, it's all based on tax movements entered and the tax closing balance is calculated. However, we've had a number of clients, not all clients like to operate that way. Other users would prefer to actually just enter a closing balance. It's a bit more natural for them. So we're going to include a template option to allow people to operate under either method. Another enhancement is a new schedule that will allow you to explain your non-P&L movements in further detail. So some of you have the need to apportion that non-P&L movement and describe those movements for note disclosure purposes, or other internal reconciliation or recording a tax expense at more granular level around those equity movements. So we have a new schedule coming that'll help with that reconciliation. Another exciting enhancement is around in the Websheets areas around the integration of, as I described before, Websheets with the classic functionality. So classic, remember that we're talking here about the tax schedules, the P&L balance sheet, losses, credits, payments, etc. And then the tax accounting schedules, they're also in that group of what we're describing as the Integrator Classic components. So you'll be able to then leverage the Websheets functionality, so the power of that new calculation engine, to build your own user-configured work papers to then feed directly into the Classic tax accounting and tax return preparation engine. So there's a number of you who have identified numerous different places around your usage of Integrator where you're using Excel models to perhaps calculate certain types of adjustments or track additional attributes in further detail outside of Integrator. So this enhancement will actually allow you to bring those spreadsheets into Integrator and actually manage them as a work paper in the platform. Some additional automation features there around updating and copying and roll forward, and a new bulk upload feature for Websheets, which will allow you to import multi-tab Excel workbooks and populate multiple Websheets and across multiple workbooks. A bunch of workflow improvements, as Briony was describing before. So a number of larger clients where they've got decentralized work or work that's been performed across a number of teams, either internal or external to their organization, are really starting to use a lot of the underlying workflow features. So we're going to improve the further transparency across tasks and task allocation, their attribution, such as who owns individual workbooks as well within the system. And all of that will then go in to help facilitate better sort of monitoring and control of a process, and then will allow us to also then produce nice dashboards that will allow you as an owner of a particular number of entities or workbooks to then easily understand status for your responsible areas. On the user interface side, a couple of major areas here. One is the browser independence. So as I'm sure you're all aware, we are limited at the moment to Internet Explorer. We are, as a high priority, getting off that. And that requires a fair bit of development work on our side, hence it hasn't been done already. But that means us moving across to what we call HTML5 compliance. And our immediate target environment beyond Internet Explorer is going to be Google Chrome. But our intention is to provide support for other browsers soon thereafter as well. A general modernization. So a lot of the componentry that you see in Integrator today is going to be improved in terms of its look and feel. A good example of the key things is the left-hand menu. So there's some really good, nice modern controls now that we can use that'll just aid the improved navigation of the platform, and will reduce the amount of scrolling that you have to do when you're sort of navigating your way through the platform. Equally too, we're going to be implementing some new graphics soon that'll just help, again, the comprehension of the platform, particularly for users who are new or infrequent in use of the platform. There's a point there on performance, that we're always investing into finding ways to improve performance. So that's just a sort of standing point there. Now on to some R&D that we're working on at the moment. So there's a bunch of R&D. So just so you're aware how we undertake our R&D, you're probably all aware, all of our development is currently undertaken by a fairly large development team based in Melbourne. We also use some extended R&D teams who are based across the Wolters Kluwer team and also beyond as well in numerous cities around the world. So we have a number of pretty exciting R&D initiatives underway at the moment that I just wanted to share with you to let you know what's coming in future. Now again, we don't know exactly when some of this stuff is going to go from proof of concept into live functionality, which you can then start to use. But yeah, some of these items are fairly, the higher priority items on our R&D activity at the moment. So the first one being the ability to basically lift an existing Excel calculation model and directly import it and create that Excel model into Integrator. Now this is something that's pretty exciting and pretty powerful when you think about its potential applications. But again, a lot of our end users are using Integrator as a way of controlling and automating aspects of their calculations of current deferred tax expense and preparation of their disclosures. But as I said before, there's often still a reliance on certain Excel spreadsheets to support the calculation of tax adjustments or the collection of other information that has to be disclosed. We have just invented and have a new feature now which can automatically pick an existing Excel spreadsheet. It can take that document and it can automatically create web sheets in the platform. So it'll create all of the menu items, it creates all of the rows and the columns, and it actually even adds all of the calculations as well. So it's parsing the Excel model and then creating it as an Integrator template. So the benefit there is that we can then all of a sudden start to use Integrator for a lot more and allow people to take their trusted models that they've been using probably for a number of years and directly import them into Integrator and then start to operate them in the cloud. Next point, robotic process automation. I'm sure you've probably all heard a lot about RPA, as it's described, as a way of automating a lot of routine manual processes. So we've been undertaking a number of proof of concepts and looking at implementing soon robotic process automation technology around where we are hosting Integrator on behalf of our clients. So again, any processes that are routine in nature, that are undertaken numerous times, can then be governed and monitored through an RPA robot controller. So again, stay tuned on further updates around that. Machine learning. So we've been playing with some machine learning technologies to look at historical data which has been collated and aggregated through the Integrator database. Historical return information, historical mapping information, to then start to assert and make assumptions around how tax adjustments should then actually be made in future periods. So that's again interesting bit of technology, and particularly then when combined with robotic process automation, can then look to potentially automatically derive certain tax adjustments based on historical adjustments. Now the final area here is again pretty exciting, but through all of the Websheets enhancements that I've described earlier on and the ability to import from Excel, a number of of both Wolters Kluwer and equally a number of the large Big Four service firms are now starting to take the Integrator platform and push it into other countries for tax calculations and disclosures. So at the moment we're working on a number of countries throughout Asia Pacific, and the priority around that's actually been led from a lot of our existing Integrator clients who have operations beyond Australia and New Zealand into a lot of Asian countries who want to gain a little bit more transparency over local tax obligations and filing requirements in those countries. So through this new framework that we've got within Integrator, we can rapidly deploy local tax compliance calculations and disclosures. So stay tuned for that. So that was a fairly quick run through of what's happened in the last release. There's another release coming up at the end of the year, Briony.
Correct. So 2017.5 at the moment is expected to be released just prior to Christmas, so mid-December. And I guess from a high-level perspective, at this stage, we will have the bulk update of files into Websheets. We'll also have bulk processes for Websheets. We've got some changes for some of the reports coming through as well.
Yep.
That's a really high-level snapshot of that. It's a very, compared to other releases, it's a slightly smaller release, but that's what we've got on the horizon at the moment.
Yep. And then looking forward into 2018, I think we're looking at, again, another 4 releases of software, so 1 every quarter is the kind of planned trajectory of future updates. And as you said before, with a large or bigger increase in our development organisation, expecting a lot more features and functions to come out. So thanks everyone for your time today, and hopefully you got something out of that of use. And if there are any questions, please feel free to email us directly. You can email me, jim.edwards@wolterskluwer.com or briony.campbell@wolterskluwer.com, and we'll respond to you with answers on any of your questions. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Briony and Jim, for today's webinar. To all our attendees, have a great day.